Uninformed immigrants are at a huge disadvantage in court, in financial and legal matters, and also sometimes in life. Well, what can we do about it? I'll tell you what. We can train, teach, inspire, and empower immigrants to maximize their lives regardless of their immigration status. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. I am your immigration lawyer and host, Otis Landerholm, and this is the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding attorney here at Landerholm Immigration A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. And unfortunately, we got some bad news about DACA. DHS has announced that they're going to be rescinding the DACA program again. And today I'd like to look at the memo that was released yesterday on July 28th, 2020, rescinding the DACA program. I'm recording this both for YouTube, and we'll share it on Facebook and things like that, and also for our podcast. So if you're in our podcast and listening, welcome to our podcast. I want to say what's happening with DACA and what this new memo means. And for those who are watching on YouTube, please check out our podcast. It's the Empowered Immigrant Podcast, available anywhere that you can find a podcast. And so I'm going to share my screen here and show you what this memo says, so that we can address the memo using the words of Chad Wolf, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security. So here it is, July 28th, 2020, which I'm filming this on the 29th, so this was released yesterday. And what they're pointing out is that in light of the Supreme Court's decision yesterday, I'll increase my screen a little bit, in light of the Supreme Court's decision last month on June 18th, the Supreme Court said that the way that the Trump administration had rescinded or terminated the DACA policy had violated the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA. And so they said that the way Trump did it was illegal, but actually, and they're pointing out right here, that the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision that did not question the authority of the Department of Homeland Security to rescind the DACA policy, but determined that the memos that in 2017 and 2018 that had terminated it did not comply with certain requirements for doing so. All right, and specifically, they're talking about it didn't qualify with the Administrative Procedures Act because it was quote unquote arbitrary and capricious. All right, and so they're just saying what the Supreme Court pointed out in that decision. And here it's saying in this memo, I am rescinding those memos, and I'm making certain immediate changes to the DACA policy, and wanting to facilitate a thorough consideration of how to address DACA in the future in light of the Supreme Court's decision. All right. Then he goes into the background about where DACA came from, what the rationale for it was, things like that, about the lawsuits that have been filed. Feel free to go and read that if you want to. I've highlighted the things that I felt most relevant to share with our audience here today. All right. And so he points out that the court observed that, quote, all parties agreed that, quote, DHS may rescind DACA, and the court provided no reason to doubt that consensus, but it held that DHS had violated the APA, as I discussed, in the manner in which it had rescinded the policy. Going down, they talk about how the rescission of those memos and the memos to terminate the DACA program. So this memo is superseding those ones. And then it goes into kind of the reasons that justify the termination of the DACA policy. So here they're setting out what their position is, all right, and what the current Department of Homeland Security position is. So I'd like to go through this because there are, and it's important to understand what this memo is saying. First, it says, even if the DACA policy could have been justified as a temporary measure when it was created, Congress arguably has had more than sufficient time to consider affording permanent status or immigration relief to the class of immigrants covered by this policy. In other words, look, Congress hasn't passed a law, all right? And so what this memo is saying is Congress has the ability to pass laws, and theoretically, according to this position, it shouldn't be the executive branch, it shouldn't be the president who is creating these new types of programs. It should be up to Congress, both houses of Congress, to put themselves in agreement and to pass a new law, all right? And it says, by contrast, rescinding DACA entirely may well create a more pressing need for Congress to decide whether it wants to address this issue. Yeah, that might be true, but the bottom line is Congress has had the DREAM Act in front of it since the year 2000 when it was first introduced. And it's been introduced and reintroduced several times. And we all know that Congress simply is divided and they are not coming to a consensus. And so by the presidency and by the executive administration rescinding DACA here, it's basically just screwing people over. It's not really going to put additional pressure on Congress. I mean, hopefully, I guess it would, right? Their second reason is that they say there has been much debate about the discretion exercised by DHS personnel in implementing the DACA policy. So basically they're saying, hey, maybe DHS personnel have approved too many DACA cases, or maybe they haven't done enough interviews, individualized interviews, or maybe they haven't pushed back on people enough. They've, I don't agree with that. I think that in our practice, they have denied a lot of DACA applications, especially when there's, arrests involved or criminal history involved, or especially when the eligibility criteria hasn't been fully documented. And so, that's why many people have come to seek attorneys to fight these types of cases. They're not just straightforward applications. And so I don't know that I agree about this debate as to whether or not DHS has had too broad of discretion in exercising DACA. All right, their third argument here is because DHS is a law enforcement agency, the secretary, I am concerned from the secretary's point of view about sending mixed messages about DHS's intention to consistently enforce immigration laws as Congress has written them. So yes, Congress wrote immigration laws, theoretically, and there are people who are here present in the United States in violation of those immigration laws. And so they're saying, hey, we don't want to send a mixed message to the law enforcement agency. Do we enforce the law or don't we? But the truth is that our executive branch has been sending mixed messages all along, because there's 11 million people in the United States that the executive branch is not enforcing immigration laws against, all right? And there are hundreds of thousands of people currently in the immigration court process that, that are sort of waiting in limbo. And there's lots and lots of people who have applied for an immigration benefit that have been waiting with backlogs for years, and the government's not enforcing those policies. And so this argument here is also, in my opinion, easily contradicted by just looking at what the department is doing. Their fourth rationale is, according to this, quote, fourth, these concerns are all the more pressing in the context of children. It is vitally important to convey a message that discourages individuals from undertaking what can often be a perilous journey to this country with no legitimate claim to enter or remain. Of course, the DACA policy would not apply to children who are sent or brought to this country today, but rescinding the DACA policy may further DHS's efforts to discourage illegal immigration involving children going forward. All right, I really don't like this paragraph, and I want to explain why. They are saying that people basically they don't want to encourage children to risk their lives and to cross a border into the United States when there is no legitimate claim to enter or remain. And what I would like to say is a lot of the people that are risking their lives to cross, Central and South America to enter the United States or to go from anywhere in the world, a lot of those claims are not, quote unquote, with no legitimate claim to enter or remain. A lot of those people have very valid applications for asylum that are, in my opinion, just being denied and rejected by this exact secretary. And so saying, and really by the administration, right, the Trump administration, saying that they're coming here with illegitimate reasons or with no legitimate claim to enter or remain in the U.S., in my opinion, is false. And they have a very legitimate reason, namely fleeing for their lives, all right? If they've been threatened or harmed or persecuted or subjected to violence or abuse in their country, then they need to get out of their country, all right? And the law has a mechanism that enables people to do that, and it's called asylum. And I just don't want our current administration to forget that. Okay. So now I want to get into the changes that are enumerated in this memo, all right? So changes pending reconsideration of the DACA policy. In accordance with the Supreme Court's decision, I am determined to give a careful consideration to whether the DACA policy should be maintained, rescinded, or modified. But in the meantime, given my serious concerns about the policy, I am determined that some changes should immediately be made to the policy to limit its scope in the interim. First, while my reconsideration of DACA policy continues, no new initial requests for DACA should be accepted. All right, right there. Second, advanced parole should be granted to current DACA beneficiaries only in exceptional circumstances. Third, going forward, renewals of deferred action and the accompanying work authorization should be granted for 1 year rather than 2-year periods. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the fundamental change that has happened in this memo that was announced yesterday. I'll repeat them. 1, DHS will no longer accept new DACA applications, all right? New initial requests will be rejected. 2, advanced parole, all right, which was rescinded in the previous memos. It's now saying that advanced parole should be granted to current DACA beneficiaries only in, quote unquote, exceptional circumstances, which we can talk about what that might be. And third, going forward, all DACA applications will be approved, if they're going to be approved, for 1 year instead of 2, which means you're going to have to renew it every single year. All right. There was a couple of other things that I highlighted in this memo, but those 3 points are the main crux of the change that we've seen here. All right. So just finishing up here, the other things I've highlighted are whatever the merits of these asserted reliance interests on the maintenance of DACA, they are significantly lessened, if not entirely lacking, with regard to people who have never before received the program. So what they're saying is, look, if you've never applied before, then you're not in any reliance on the benefits of your DACA program. You're not relying on your work permit. You're not relying on deferred action in any way. That's what it's saying. And so that's just a justification of not accepting new DACA applications. And then it says, nor are the asserted reliance interests significantly affected by shortening the renewal periods from 2 years to 1 year. All right. And they do talk about here that they recognize that the shortening renewal periods will have the effect of increasing the fees. All right. The renewal fees that a person will need to be required to pay over a multi-year period, but the fees per application will remain constant. And the fee that DHS charges for the application is associated with the processing costs to DHS. So in other words, kind of like tough for those who are going to have to now pay every year to renew instead of every other year. I mean, I just think that's a it's just a bummer, right? It's just a bummer. You shouldn't have to deal with this. So accordingly, effective immediately, DHS shall, and here are those big points again, right? Reject all initial DACA requests, all right? Refund all associated fees related to, basically, they're just not going to accept them, all right? Limit the period of any deferred action under the DACA program to 1 year, and refrain from issuing deferred action or things or work permits. Oh yeah, okay. Sorry. This isn't the advanced parole thing. This is refraining from terminating any grants of previous issued ones. So if you've had DACA in the past, they're not going to terminate it now through this memo. You can continue with your DACA program, all right? That's not what this is saying. You're allowed to continue with DACA. They're not going to terminate it because of this memo, all right? So just continue to have it. But when it's time to renew, your renewal will be valid for 1 year instead of 2, all right? Then it says reject any and all pending or future I-131 applications for advanced parole, all right? Absent quote unquote exceptional circumstances. Refrain from terminating any previously grants of advanced parole. So if you've got an approved advanced parole document, you can continue to use it. And exercise its discretionary authority to terminate or deny deferred action when otherwise appropriate. All right, that's it. Thank you for being with me today. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. All right, and we are continuing to monitor the DACA saga. All right, DACA is often in the limelight and often a subject for political back and forth. And so, you know, for those who have DACA, I'm sorry that this announcement came out. I'm sorry that it is affecting you. For those who were thinking of reapplying for DACA, I mean, we've had people that are calling us wanting to reapply for DACA. And it's like, unfortunately, it looks like the government's going to reject those cases. Now, here's the thing. It might not be the end of the story. There might be lawsuits to challenge this memo. And so there might be some thought to consider, you know, even continuing and applying regardless, because heck, if this were challenged and if some court said, no, this memo's not valid for some reason, then hey, you might be able to get it in. But for now, you know, this is what it is. I wanted to explain the memo so it's clear. If you have questions about it, please feel free to contact our office. And yeah, again, I'm sorry for everybody with DACA. DACA, in my opinion, is a how can I say it? It's like Obama tried to put a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. All right, and the gushing wound is the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who need a more permanent status in the United States. And the DACA program isn't a permanent status at all. It's just basically a work permit. For now, it's just going to be for 1 year at a time. And some basically agreement where, hey, if you give me your information, I won't deport you. It's not exactly a real change in somebody's immigration status. And it's certainly not the change that we all need so badly for the U.S. economy and everything else. But hopefully, something like this could actually spark some kind of congressional action. But what are the likely chances of that? I mean, it's tough to say, especially in this administration. Anyway, I rant. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm Otis Landerholm Immigration A.P.C., where we fight for your American dream. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. If you like what you heard and if you want to learn more, please go to landerholmimmigration.com/podcast.